Hi, welcome to First Code Academy. I'm going to be your instructor for your Python course. I'm a Python programmer, versatile in the knowledge of the web development and web application building, and also I develop softwares that carry out specific tasks. I'm also a data analyst using the Python tools that we have for data analysis. So I have a handful knowledge to help guide you and coach you and mentor you for this course. I'm an instructor also in First Code Academy. So why Python? Python is a programming language. It's popular because it's easy to learn. Anybody can understand Python because its syntaxes are very easy to catch up with, unlike other programming languages like the C++, the C sharp, the C programming language. Python programming is also a high level programming language. So if you are a student in computer science in your school, you know what I'm saying. Higher level language, programming languages are those sets of programming language that's been created to help programmers ease their works and be very fast in delivering jobs. So you don't get to set up some kind of codes before you can get started. So it's quite easier. So as a matter of fact, we have three levels of programming language, which we have the machine language, we have the lower level language, and also the higher level language. So Python fall into the higher level language, which you are learning today. And it's highly rated in big companies today. So you could see how valuable you'll be for many companies at the end of this course. And this course is going to be a little bit tasky. So before we get started, you're going to understand what is actually programming or programming language. In computer science, we learned that programming language, they are sets or codes of instructions given to your computer. So it's not a big deal. You could tell AI, do this for me. You are giving the AI an instruction to do something for you. But in this context, you are telling the computer using some sets of language that the computer understands to tell the computer to do a particular thing for you. So you have the idea in your head and you're going to pass the idea through your understanding of those instructions. So the instructions is what we call the syntax, the language. So it is not a big deal. It's you giving the computer an instruction and the computer is obeying, adhering to giving you back the result. All right. So first of all, we're going to look into understanding our code editor. This is Visual Studio Code, and I believe it is installed working properly in your system right now. The first place here is what we call the Explorer. It's similar to the Explorer you have in your system where you save your works. I'm talking about the Explorer here. This yellow file manager that you have here. So, and one of the use of Explorer is to save files and folders. It's the same with this Explorer we have here. We are going to be creating folders and then storing files, Python files, inside this folder. So it's not a big deal, but this is how we write our codes. We write our codes in files and then store those files inside a folder. And then we have this extension here. Extension here is where we get to download other dependencies. That is, other installations that Python depends on to carry out a specific task. So you're not going to touch much of it right now, but we're going to go straight to creating the folder and file. There are about 2 or 3 ways to create folder in this place. You can come here and then open a folder. It will direct you to Local Explorer, which is your Machine Explorer. And I love saving my works in document. You can save yours in desktop. Anywhere you want to save your works, you can save your works. And you create your first folder. And then you can right click the button and go to new. In the new, you create your folder. You can say Python course, or my Python course. You can say my Python course. So my Python course, hit save. The moment you hit save, is highlighted for you. You can come down below here to click select. And then it will be loaded into the Visual Studio Code editor. And now we can relate with the folder. Folder is saved here. So in this folder is where we're going to be working. And for the rest of your course section, you're going to be having all your work saved in this, your first folder. All right. This time we are going to be learning how to create files. If you come to this place and click, hover around this place, you discover that it's popping up a new file for you. So I'm going to go ahead to click it and create a file. I can say lesson 1.py. There's such thing as file extension, which differentiates to tell you what type of file you are working with. I can say here lesson 1.jpg. It has changed to image file. This is an image logo, which means that JPG is an image file. I can say .pdf. PDF can be activated for me to use. So extension of what we call the file extension helps you to understand what type of file you are working with. So we are working with Python files. So Python files are saved with .py. So you can head on to click enter and the file will be open for you. So with this, you have created a Python file. So next, we are going to learn variables, what we call Python variables. So Python variables is not a big deal, but it's being seen as a container that functions are being stored in. Let's take, for example, your bottled water. Your bottled water is the container that stores the value, which is called the water. It's not the water, but it's the container that stores the water. So it helps hold some water, probably from germs and from other things that may contaminate the water, or for you to be able to carry it with yourself anywhere you go, so that for use. The same way with Python and programming language in general, we save values inside container, and these containers are called variables. So get used to the word variable now. I can go ahead and say bottle. So, and then I'm going to say assigned a value to the bottle. I can say 100. Now, this is called a variable that holds your value. Take a good example again. You given a question in mathematics that says the length of a bench is 100 meters, the width is 50 centimeters, and the height is 100 centimeters. So find the weight or whatever question they may give you. So first of all, what you got to do, you got to say, let x be equal to 100 centimeters, y be equal to what? 200 centimeters, and let width be equal to 10 millimeters. So all these are what we call variables. So variables stores values for use. So if you are referring to your work later when you begin to work here, you're not referring to the values anymore, but you're going to be referring to the variables. So the same way with programming, it's as simple as your basic mathematics. So you have bottle and 100 value is assigned to it. So let's take, for example, the value of bottle is 100 and the value of bottle 2, let's say bottle 2 is 200, and then you keep creating variables. So you have actually known the value of each of these bottles, and that is beautiful. So the next thing you're going to learn is the print function. The print function is one of the powerful function syntax of Python programming language. It helps to output results in our terminal. So I'm going to say print. This is the powerful function to learn. It helps to do what output. I'm going to say print bottle. You discover I'm not referring to the value, but I'm referring to the bottle here. So if I click here, you're going to see that the value of bottle was printed for me here. This is so beautiful. I can say print bottle 2. Bottle 2. And then I go to click print again. You see that bottle 2 is also printed for me here. This is so powerful. Print function helps to output values. Next is to learn what we call the comment function. Comment is another syntax we use to mute or to add description to our code. Like I can press an hashtag here and say, this is my first function. It's readable and it's not executable. Why? Because it's muted, but it gives this description to say this is my first function. So I can come here to give a good description for a good understanding. I can say this is my first function and it is a print function. And it is a print function. So it makes this unexecutable. When we say something is unexecutable, it means it is free from running. So even though I come here to click here, you are not going to see it being run. Why? Because it is muted. So that is what we call comment. That is another powerful syntax to use in your work. So this type of comment is called an inline comment. It is the type of comment that you give to mute just a single line. So if I should come here right now, I am free from that comment line. So it's only effective just for one line. So if I want to make this line unexecutable, I can just say hashtag I am different. And then you discover that the fifth line of the code is also unexecutable. And we have another type of comment, which is called a multi-line comment. If you go down here, it's used by using what quote, 3 quotes like this. It's called multi-line comment. So I can write inside it this way. I say, this is multi-line comment. So I can go to the next line and say, I can still write this code in the next line because I am multi. line. Now, you see, I keep going. Why? Because I've created a comment. This is a unique comment and is used for multiple lines of code. So we're going to head on to understand what data types is. Data types, I'm going to use comment to give it data types. Data types are referred basically to types of data and how those data are rendered. Our computer doesn't understand a plain text or English language as you understand, but what our computer understands is what we call the code language. And this is the reason why you are learning this language now, so that you can be able to talk to the computer in the language it understands. Two things to note here. Python language are written in syntaxes, whereas your English language is written in the guidelines of the grammatical structure. So your grammatical structure forms the basics of a good English. And also the syntax, your understanding of syntaxes and appropriately using them will give you good codes. And the difference between Python syntax and the English grammar rules is that if I said something like this, hello, how are you? You will get to understand this in English so fast because you will know, even though it is grammatically wrong. But in Python, I can't make that mistake. I must write the exact syntax that carries out that particular function. So let's say, for example, I am writing print again, and this print, I am saying, this is me. It's throwing up errors inside it because Python doesn't understand plain English. So if you should hover around it, you say this is not defined. It means Python doesn't understand English. What if I remove this from inside, from this place? You discover that it's showing a red error somewhere here, which shows that Python syntax is incorrect. So any mistake you make, even if you make mistake of just removing or adding a dot here, it can terminate or make your 100 lines of code useless. So it's as that powerful. That's why you must pay good attention to understand how this thing works. So how can we write this is me and without showing error? Is what we call the data types. We need to differentiate them and how to write each data. All right. So the first data types of Python that we have is what we call, I'm going to be using comments throughout here, is what we call the string data type. So the string data type. And number two is the number. Number three, we have Boolean. Boolean is meant to be double O. Number four is that we have the dictionary data types. We have number five, the list data types. Number six, we have tuple data types. Number seven, we have set data types. Number eight, we have arrays. And number 9, we have object data types. Number 8 and number 9 are in advanced kind of level, but we're going to be dealing with number 7 down to number 1. in this course. Number 8 and number 9 are going to be partially taught when we get to number 4 and number 5. All right. So what is string data type? String data types are those data types that are surrounded in quotes. Like alphabet is a string data type because alphabets are written in plain English. So Python doesn't understand plain English because number one, it is not written in plain English. So your computer doesn't understand English language, nor Hebrew language, nor French language. So, but how can we write those languages that our computer is going to understand? This is what we call the string data types. So everything called alphabet is called a string data types. So, but we have like two types of string data types, which is what we call the number string and what we call the alphabet string. So we have all of this here, and that's powerful. Now, one of the similarity or peculiarity of string data types is that it's always surrounded with either a single quote or a double quote like this. So I can say, this is me for real. So you discover that it's going to read this because Python is going to understand that, oh, you are now communicating to me. And you must ensure that it's in quote. If not, there's going to be error. I can also use double quotes to say, this is me in double quotation, like this. So either of these is very good. Number data types are written also in string. Like I say 100, I said 200. All of these are called number strings because they are written in string. This is different from the normal number that you know because this is now rendered in a string format. So Python understands this and then is saying this is a string format. This type of number doesn't give you mathematical expressions. So when you want to do some evaluations using this type of numbers, you're going to find errors because they are not real numbers, they are string numbers. Until you convert them to real numbers, you cannot use them. So let's go ahead to use all of this now. First thing to note, we don't write directly like this into our ID because it doesn't have a relation, and we can't refer to this type of expression to be outputted for us. So always bear in mind that whatever we do is always stored in the variable containers. So I can say this is a string, and I'm passing a string and calling it a variable that will store this is for real. So I'm going to cut out this is for real from here and assign it into this variable. Right now, I can have access to this is for real, and I'll put it in our output for you to see. So I'm going to say print using the print function and say string. Of course, string is going to be printed for us. Why? Because it is now having a relation called string in a variable. So let's print. You're going to see that this is for real is here. This is so powerful. The next thing you're going to note or know is what we call the number data types. In number data types, we have two major types of number data types, or three. Let me call three major types of data types, number data types. We have the integer data types. We have the floating point number data types, and then we have complex complex numbers, data types. So these three types of numbers are so interesting and very powerful. In our simple mathematics, we know what integer is. Let me say number as a variable here. Let me call it num as a variable here that is storing something like 100. 100 is a good example of an integer number. Integer number in mathematics are numbers that are whole. That's a whole, or what we refer to as whole numbers. So integer numbers are whole numbers. So then we have floating point numbers. I can say num2 as a variable name, and then I'll say floating point numbers is when we have something like 100 with a decimal points and then maybe say 5 or something in front of it. This is called floating point numbers, or what we call the decimal numbers or decimal point number. But in programming, we don't call it decimal point numbers, we call them floating point numbers. We're going to know more why we call them floating point numbers in our works, maybe when we begin to do real life practical or using it to run projects. You're going to see how it works. So this is floating point numbers. So like the complex numbers, as I'm going to save this as a variable name, complex numbers, you're not going to touch much of it right now, but when you're doing projects later or projects after your class, you're going to see how complex numbers are being used. These are the types of numbers that we use for serial numbers. Some where you can be generated some kind of serial numbers to pay for your online transactions, or a bank generating a reference number for you. These are types of complex numbers. So complex numbers are mixtures of numbers and alphabet. So that is beautiful. So this is what we call complex number. So it's beautiful. You're going to be not touching much of it right now because it's quite advanced. I don't want to go into it right now. And then we have the third data types to be a Boolean. A Boolean data types is stating that something is true or false. So you can have true here and also false. False. So it's either true or false. So these two values here are very important. So I can save them here and say bool, which represent Boolean variable, and say true. So you see, it's throwing true here. I can also say bool is throwing false. False here. So these are good examples of what we call the bool data types or Boolean data types. Now, number 4 is what we call dictionary. Dictionary simply means you having something and defining the particular things. Like, what is Victor? Victor is a name of person and a winner. So you are defining Victor, or Victor is being explained. So dictionary has to do with key and value. Key is, in this regard, is Victor. Victor, and value in this regard is the definition of Victor. So I can come down here and do that properly. Let's say, for example, we want to take names of people in the class. A list is being provided for people to fill their names and their surname. So I'm going to say dictionary for students. I'm saying students as a variable name. I'm passing a dictionary here. Dictionary has to be in what we call the curly braces or curly bracket. Is actually curly. That's why the word curly is being given to it. Curly bracket. And then you enter. Inside it, I'm going to say name. And then the first person can say, or the name of this person, this person's data can be Victor. So Victor is being passed here, and then you separate it with comma. You come to this place and say surname, and you can say surname is Godwin. So I can say middle name is Akko. And then you separate it with comma. You go to the next line, you separate it with comma, and then I can say course of study, I can just say software engineering. Beautiful. And then we keep mentioning, I can say marital status, married. So all of this is formed. So I can go down here and say I want to print or output students. So it's going to output what? The list, the dictionary of the students in our bracket. So I'm going to run this code here, and you see if I scroll down, you're going to see that Victor, name, Victor, surname, Victor, Godwin, middle name, Akko, course of study in software engineering, and all of this. So it's so beautiful to understand data types, and you discover that it's relating to what you know already and how to do them. So this is how programming is, and programming is all about telling the computer to relate with what human beings do every day. So that is why we programmers, or the programmers that you are becoming, your aim is solving problems, solving man's problem, meeting man's need at every point in time. So it's powerful. And all starts with the understanding of all of these that you're learning today. So list is like a list of persons or list of items. So you can say list here and say list of items. So I can say, let's say fruits, for example, as a variable, and then I pass a list here. So I can say fruits, I can say cherry, I can say mango, I can say apple. You discover that I'm putting all of them in string format, but because this is the only language that your Python and computer understands. I can say orange, and as much as you can. So you can also print fruits, and fruits is going to be printed for you. So if I click here and fruits, if I scroll down, you're going to see that fruit is printed for you. That's so beautiful. And then the other one is tuple. Tuple is also the type of data types that works similar to that of list, but there are differences, because list, first of all, let's say I am having fruits here again, and then I want to use tuple. I'm going to use what we call the parentheses. Now, this is a major difference, where list is using a square bracket, tuple is using a parenthesis, and here I can pass on everything that is here, and place in this place, and I will still print the same thing. I can say print fruits. fruits, or I can call it fruits tuple. So print fruits tuple, and let me rename the variable name as fruit tuple. So it's going to print fruit tuple. Let me add one more here so that you can see there are differences in the output. I can say here etc. So I don't know what each fruit to say now. And then I go down a little here, you discover that it's printing tuple here. And now let's analyze their differences. It's doing the same similar thing, but the difference is obvious as programmers to know. Number one, the obvious difference that you've got to know quickly is the rendition of the brackets. This is square bracket and this is parenthesis. Now, the difference here again is that this one, after you have declared it, you can still change them. Like I can come down to this place and say I am printing. I can select X variable, the store. What I'm going to do, I say let X store fruits dot append, and then I am appending something, like adding something to it, or one more thing. I'm going to say it should append grape. So it's appending grape into it. So I'm going to say it should print what? Let me remove it from variable. You can work directly. So I can say like this, and then you're going to print fruits. So if I run my code again, you're going to see that it's going to print fruits with append grape, which tells you that this can be changed. I can also remove from here by popping out any of these, even after I have declared fruits variable list like this. But the difference is that while list is susceptible to changes, tuple cannot be changed after declaration. Let's say, for example, I want to add one more fruit to tuple. I can say fruit tuple dot append, and then I'm adding a fruit called guava. This guava, and then I'm going to print fruits now. Print fruits tuple. So let's print fruit tuple now. And printed, and then it's going to pop up some error for us, and it's going to be our first error to understand. The error is saying here in line 58, which is this line 50, is it 58, 54, which is this line here that we appended fruits to. And saying the line is saying an attribute error. This is how we read error in programming. It's popping out this error, and the type of error is called attribute error. What is the attribute that is there is the append that we added. So it said tuple object has no attribute called append. So it means it's not changeable. That's what it means there. That is the implication of it. It's not changeable. When you have declared a tuple list like this, you can't change it no more. So that's powerful, and this is just a major difference here. So I'm going to comment these two lines out like this. I did a shortcut just now. You can also try that. You mark it out like this and press Ctrl /. It's going to uncomment them, and you press Ctrl /. You're still going to comment them together if you really want to do them with shortcuts code. All right, let's go on. And then the seventh one we're going to be learning today in data types is called a set. Sets work similarly to tuple and list, But one of the obvious difference is that the set list is stored in curly braces, and then it carries list of items like this, and then you can also print. So you can go ahead to print and see their differences by also adding attributes append to it to see what it can give you. All right, that's fine. So next, we are going to learn Python attributes. And we are going to learn attributes, first of all, that are peculiar to list and peculiar to other data types that we have. So we're going to be looking at list attributes. So I'm going to bring down this list here. Or in fact, I'm going to create another file. So I'm going to say attributes.py. So attribute.py is where we're going to be learning attributes, some of the attributes that we have here. So I'm going to paste the list here. Let me clear up this place, the terminal. So I'm going to come here. The first, we have learned about the attribute called append. Let's learn another attribute, powerful attribute called pop. Pop. Now, what is attribute in the first place? Attribute are special functions, or what we call the inline functions, that helps to modify or to change the behavior of a particular line of code or a particular block of code. So append in the first instance helps to modify the list by adding to the list. So pop function here, we remove from the list. So pop we delete from the list. So I'm going to say fruits.pop. Pop. And what am I popping out? I can say it should pop out 2 for me. Let's print this and see. Print fruits. So let's print fruits. You see that 2 is being removed. Now, so this will usher us to learn what we call indexing in programming. Indexing is a numbering system in programming. In programming, we have the first item not to be called item number 1, but is starting its number system from 0. So the first item is bearing 0, 1, and 2. That was why Apple was popped out of the list. So it's so powerful. So you can also learn another one, which is called sort. Sort is used to rearrange the list in alphabetical order. So I can say here fruits.sort. So sort. And I can print fruit. So by the time you print fruits, it's going to sort this in alphabetical order. It's discovered that it's in alphabetical order. What if we have here another thing like A, like almond, like almond. I don't know what it is, but I'm just trying to pass an items that starts its alphabet A, so that we can be able to read through. And then I'm going to print. By the time you print, you see that almond comes first. It sorts, rearrange it in alphabetical order. And then we still have many more you can learn. So I'm going to list them out for you here so that you can take practices with them. We have what we call fruits dot, no. So we have what we call fruits dot clear copy, extend, remove, reverse, insert, index. You can play with all of these. These are attributes that we have. And this is one of the powerful things about this code editor. It helps to suggest what you really need. So that is why I said in the beginning is beginner friendly. So you don't get to lose much or to crack your head so much in getting a particular thing done. It helps to remind you. So that's all. So in this course, this is your assignment. You're going to make a note. You're going to make a comprehensive notes different from the different from your study notes, and different from your study notes, different from your study notes. One, what you're going to be making notes of is variable. Get as much variables and get yourself used to variables. Number two is what we call the number two is the data types. Explain all the data types and give examples. And number three, write in details what print function does. So these are the three assignments you're going to do. Please engage this. The essence of this assignment is to help commit you to get acquainted with all of these rudiments you are learning. Thank you.